Good evening. On behalf of Eco Canada, welcome back to our Eco Canada Tutti Tavola online cooking experiences. Tutti Tavola this year is promoted and financed by the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, carried out by Camere Estero in collaboration with the Italian Chambers of Commerce abroad to strengthen and to protect the authentic Italian products. Tonight we welcome back DeLonghi as our sponsor. DeLonghi is based in Treviso, Italy, and he's the global leader in espresso machines, kitchen appliances, and home comfort products. Innovation, quality, and award-winning design are some of the core values of the DeLonghi brand. Present in over 123 countries, DeLonghi is committed to creative innovations that elevate consumers every day and transform home experiences into moments to be relished. So thank you very much, DeLonghi, for being with us for this class and for giving the chance once again to a lucky participant to win DeLonghi's La Specialista coffee machine. And congratulations to Michael from Nipin, the winner of last class draw. Remember, if you're not a winner tonight, the special DeLonghi code we sent you will allow you to purchase the state-of-the-art coffee machine at a discounted price. Tonight, Chef Roberto Fracchioni will show us how to prepare coffee linguine, a delicious pasta recipe with a twist. Executive chef for over 20 years, professor and business consultant for restaurateurs in the hospitality sector, Roberto has been working with us since 2017 for the promotion of authentic Italian cuisine in Ontario. His recipes, created exclusively for our cooking class series, have received enthusiastic comments from all of you since the very beginning of this program last year in April. So thank you so much for following us in such great numbers. I also would like to welcome Susie Durigan, who will be in conversation with our chef this evening. Susie is a trained chef, a food blogger, a part-time culinary instructor, a food brand ambassador, a wannabe farmer, a mom, and a wife. Not in any particular order, as she says. Susie shares her recipes and food stories on her personal blog, Just Crumbs. And a while back, she began a movement called Bake It Forward, where she delivers homemade baked goods to people she values. What a great initiative. So thank you for joining us, Susie, and I leave the stage to you and Roberto for this cooking class. I can't wait to see how these coffee linguine are made. So over to you, and thank you.
Hey everyone.
Awesome.
Hey Roberto.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm awesome. I wish you were here beside me so we could
Me
like
too.
do this together.
Me too,
Oh
'cause
well.
the recipe sounds awesome, like totally awesome.
Yeah, today's pasta is a little bit unique, and I've always tried to stay away from pastas in these classes because a lot of people just think when I think of Italian cuisine they think about pastas, but this is just an amazing example of how to use pasta. Sorry, how to use coffee as an ingredient. So it incorporates into the dish in a way that most people wouldn't think about doing it. So it's kind of unique and kind of fun, and I don't know. I think it's pretty cool. So we'll see how it goes.
We'll be the only thing I'm going to remind everyone is you got to listen really closely because we're going to be chatting through this whole thing, but somewhere during today's program we're going to be giving you a keyword that you have to remember, and you got to listen, so you got to watch right to the end, and a lucky winner is going to win this incredible DeLonghi coffee machine that you see right there. It's beautiful. I wish I could have it. But anyway, listen, because the keyword's going to come at some point, and then at the end, we'll do you have to email the keyword in to us, and then we will pick a winner.
Cool. All right, so we're going to get started, if that's okay. So for anyone who knows me, you know how much I love coffee. Like I drink a ridiculous amount of coffee. And that's why I was so excited when DeLonghi chose to sponsor these classes. There's a million things you can do with coffee, but I just want to say it all starts with a good cup of coffee. when you use coffee in your recipes, you have to treat it like olive oil, like herbs, like any other ingredient. It has to be good. And coffee, yes, the roasting of the beans is very, very important, but the extraction, the way in which the coffee is made, is I think more important than the actual roasting. I think it can hide some mistakes during the roasting process. But either way, this is why I love DeLonghi, because they make great machines. I went from a big crazy machine that it takes 15 minutes to make a coffee. It took 3 hours to warm up. To my DeLonghi Nespresso machine, which has been a godsend. It takes 30 seconds to make a coffee.
We all know that.
To warm up.
Just before we went on, we were like, Roberto, where are you? And he's like, I'm making an espresso. And we're like, wait, but we're going on in a minute. And he's like, 30 seconds.
It's wonderful. I used to have to get my son used to jump on me at like 6 a.m, and I'd be like, okay, go turn on the machine. And he would walk into the kitchen, turn on the espresso machine so that it would warm up in time. So by the time I got out of bed, the machine would be ready to make a coffee. Now with the Nespresso machine, it's like it's amazing. And DeLonghi makes some bulletproof machines. Just an FYI, if you put one on a boat, make sure that you Velcro it down, because we've lost 2 into Lake Ontario.
There's a story for that one.
So, yeah, got a little wavy, and twice they went over the side of the boat. So
Roberto, somebody just messaged and said that the coffee that you used in the burger last time was amazing. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
See, and this is it. I love cooking with coffee. I really, really do. So I'm gonna stop blabbing and I'm gonna start cooking, if that's cool. So we're gonna start by doing our little bit of vegetable prep. Now, this recipe, honestly, you can do it start to finish. You can make the sauce in the time it takes for your pasta to boil. I'm going to slow it down a little bit, do it a little bit differently, where I'm going to prep my sauce ahead of time and then cook my pasta, throw it all together. Just because I find a lot of people with their timing in the kitchen, it's always tough, right? Like, it's always tough to get your sauce done at the exact same time as your pasta. Yeah. So this sauce holds very well. You can make it ahead of time and put it on the back burner for 20 minutes. So that if, the dog gets out or I don't know, something weird happens, then you can just let it sit there, cook your pasta when you're ready and go. So the recipe itself is a little bit more fall than the end of June when it's 9,000 degrees outside. But because of the ingredients, we're using squash and we're using pears. So a little bit of butternut squash. I love cooking with butternut squash. I think it has a wonderful flavor, and I like them better in the summer. It's kind of weird, but like, they're nice and small. I like them when they're small. Usually when I buy squash in the fall, the bottoms, the bulbs are giant. Yeah. And then you cut it open and it's just this big empty cavity. So I like them in the summer because they're all neck, like they're all meat. So I know it's kind of backwards, but hey, whatever. So we're going to start just by doing a very fine dice of our squash. So peel your squash. When it comes to peeling a squash, I always tell people, throw your peeler away. You peel squash with a knife. And the reason is, if you just peel it with a peeler, you will just remove that outside skin. And it's, it gets rid of the skin, but you leave this sort of light orange piece of the squash on there. And that doesn't taste very great. So what you want to do is, when you peel your squash, get right underneath that orange, the light orange, right down to the deep, dark orange part of the squash. You can eat the outside part. It's just, it doesn't taste as sweet. And the texture, it's a lot tougher. So when you go to cook it, it'll cook at a different rate. So I'm going to see if I can do a close up here, but you can see there's a very, very distinct line of the dark orange versus the light orange. So you want to remove all of that.
Roberto, is it kind of like the pith of a lemon?
It's not nearly as drastic a difference.
Yeah.
But it does, more than anything, it's about the texture of it. It's just a lot more firm. Gotcha. So when you go to cut it, and especially in this application where we're doing a very, very fine dice of it, you'll just find you'll get some hard pieces of squash, and that's not cool. Nobody wants to eat that. So now, quick little dice, and I'm doing about, I'd say about an 1/8 of an inch dice. It doesn't have to be this small. I just like the way this looks when it's all done. It kind of cradles in amongst all the little noodles, and it's pretty awesome. Okay, so another little dice. Oops. Try not to cut myself. Wow, why are you so slippery today? I've only done this 10,000 times, and today I'm going to cut myself because people are watching. Okay, so have you ever cooked with coffee, Susie? Like, is it an ingredient?
In the recipe, you say saute it until it's soft on the outside, but still a little bit hard on the inside. Is that because it's little, like you're dicing it?
No, it's because we're going to continue to cook it. So if you cook it fully in the pan, before you add the shallots and everything else, then by the time it's done, they just kind of like crumble and fall apart, which is not the end of the world.
Right.
But it's just nice if they stay together in these nice, pretty little dices.
Yeah.
And it just, like I said, it's all about aesthetics, right? It just looks cool when you can see the little bits of squash floating around in your pasta. Yeah. Okay. So finish this last one. Remind me to sharpen my knife before next week's class, because this one's not doing so hot.
Do you remember when you were in chef school and they would like come by and measure like how big the dice was?
Oh, geez, I've done that with my students and with my cooks for up until very, very recently. It's important. I mean, it's about even consistency of cooking. One, yes, it's about the aesthetics, and we all know how important that is, especially in the world of Instagram and everybody having a voice through their social media. But it's just it cooks a lot more evenly, and that's the important part. Yeah. So we're done. We have a little bit of diced squash, which is kind of cool. And now we move on to a little bit of shallot. Now, I choose shallot for this instead of garlic because I find garlic really tends to overpower the squash, the butternut squash. So with the shallot's kind of, halfway between an onion and a garlic. So it just gives it that oniony sort of, oomph, but it doesn't overpower any of the other ingredients. So very fine dice, again, of shallots, and our prep is almost done. So this is what I love about this dish, is that it is really, really quite easy to prep. So there's our shallot. Ooh.
How beautiful is that dice? So awesome.
Even with a dull knife. Like I've done it before. So one thing I'm going to start right away is the coffee element. Now, there's a lot of ways to incorporate the flavor of coffee into your food. One way that I like to do with pasta is I actually make pasta with coffee grounds in it. So you add, you do some super fine grind of coffee, and then you throw it in with your flour when you're actually making the pasta. Now, we don't have time to do that today, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the coffee kind of as a sauce, kind of as a secondary sauce to the dish. So we start off with a little bit of espresso. So this is just a double pull, so 2 ounces of espresso. Put that into a little pot, and we're going to add some sugar to it. So a little bit of sugar, and we just put that on and we simmer it. So it doesn't take very long, so you do have to kind of keep an eye on it. But the biggest benefit about doing having the coffee incorporated into the pasta this way is that your whole kitchen ends up smelling like coffee, which is awesome.
Rebecca, somebody asked if they don't have espresso. They clearly need an espresso machine from DeLonghi if they don't have an espresso
Absolutely.
machine. But if they don't have one tonight and they want to make this, could they use regular coffee?
You absolutely can use regular coffee. The difference, the modification you have to make is you have to simmer it for a very long time. Because what we're doing is we're reducing this to evaporate all the water and to get it sort of like a caramel almost. Right. The sugar is in there to, combat the bitterness of it, because it's not a predominant flavor in the dish. It's not like you eat it and you think you're eating coffee beans. It's there. So you have to kind of, meter it a little bit. If you're using drip coffee, absolutely you can, but it's going to simmer for a very, very, very long time, like a long time.
Long time, like tomorrow.
Long time. Like, well, not tomorrow, but oh man, that came up to a boil quick. So I'm using induction units here, which are great for doing this because the simmering is nice, even heat, but you can do this on gas stoves. It really doesn't matter. It'll all work out in the end. You just want a nice, gentle simmer that is going to slowly reduce your sauce, and you just keep an eye on it. Now, we often cook, I don't know, chefs, we cook with our senses, right? With all of our senses. So you'll smell it, it'll smell like coffee. It already smells like coffee in here. And then the scent will change. And you'll start to notice that it smells a little sweeter. So that's when you'll know to start keeping an eye on it. So use your nose if you're busy doing the sauce, I guess is the lesson in that. Okay, so we have our squash, we have our shallots. Our other ingredient is a little bit of pear. So again, like I said, this is kind of a fall-y sort of dish, squash and pears, but the pears are essential. A little bit of sweetness is really important in this dish. The taleggio, which we're going to get to in a minute, it's a stronger cheese. It's very, very rich. So you need to kind of, play off of that and kind of tone it down. So using a Boss pear adds a bit of sweetness to it. And I always use Bosc, by the way. When I cook, I almost always use Bosc pears. I love the flavor of Bosc pears, and the way that they cook is incredible. They stay nice and firm. They don't go mushy and gross and, blah, blah, blah. And we want that. We want a little bite. They're just going in raw right at the end. So this is the fun part where we get to use our mandolins. So how many times have you cut yourself with a mandolin, Susie?
Parts of your knuckles, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of the joke in restaurants is that I'd always tease my students and my young cooks that they're not real chefs unless they've been bitten by a mandolin at least 3 times. Yeah. So, and it still happens. I don't know if you can see, where is it? I got one on my finger the other day. So it happens. It happens to this day. So we're just going to do this, push it through the mandolin so that we get these nice, tiny little shreds of pear. Needs a second for that to focus. Yeah. So you don't have to do it this way if you don't have a mandolin. You can always do it with a knife. See if I can pull this off with a knife. And whoever can tell the difference between the mandolin cut and my cuts wins the coffee machine. No, I'm only kidding. You can always do it this way, but mandolins are just so much easier. So we're going to push this through, and because we're doing the pear ahead of time, it's going to be about 20 minutes before we actually incorporate the pear into the dish. We have to put this in water or else it's going to go brown. It'll get all nasty and funky, and it'll get all soft and mushy, which we don't want to do. Do you like all my culinary terms? Soft and mushy, funky. I'm just making this stuff up. So into a small bowl, and we're just going to add a little bit of cold water. There, I just smelt the change. I just smelt the change in the coffee. All right, so now, if you look, you can see how the bubbles are staying there. So before the bubbles were coming up and going down right away, now that foam, those bubbles kind of linger. And it's kind of hard to see, but there's just a shine to it from the sugar. Okay, I take it off the heat and the bubbles stay there, and when I swoosh it around, it's nice and thick. So what we have to do here is make sure we take it off a little bit early. If you reduce it until it's completely thick, as it sits in the pot is still hot, so it will continue to cook. It'll continue, we call it carryover cooking. And it'll carry over and it'll get too thick and it'll be very burnt and acrid and not very nice. So we take it off a bit early and we're ready for making of the sauce. We ready?
Oh, excited. Oh my God, I'm so excited.
Any questions before I start this?
Nothing yet.
Want to know anything?
Someone asked, what is Taleggio DOP and where does it come from?
So Taleggio DOP, it's a wonderful cheese that is very misunderstood. Anyone who knows taleggio thinks about it like a super stinky cheese. It's not. It does have a perfume. It does have a scent that is much stronger than, like, I don't know, mozzarella from the grocery store. But it smells a lot stronger than it tastes. So it's from northern Italy. Here in Canada, we normally get the pasteurized milk version, because in Italy there's both unpasteurized and pasteurized.
Right.
But here in Canada, almost all of the taleggio we get is pasteurized cheese. It is gorgeous. It is, like I said, well perfumed. And the reason I like it is because it's always surprising when you start cooking with it. People, like I said, if they know it, they know how strongly the scent is. But when you eat it, it's much less strong. So you can see the rind is very unique, and that it has this like salmon colored skin, the salmon colored rind. And that's from the washing of the rind. So during the aging process, the rind is washed with salt mixture, and it grows a lot of mold. When you see these aging on a shelf, it looks like little cubes of snow, like they're white and green and blue and all kinds of funky different colors. But that's what gives it its unique flavor. But the inside of the cheese, this one just came out of the fridge, so it's still a little bit firm. It has the consistency of like a brie. It'll run when it's at room temperature, but when it's cold, it's still pretty firm. So the inside of the younger taleggio's are completely white, like this one, and they're creamy and they're sweet, and they don't taste like the skin does. Now, you can eat the rind. There's absolutely nothing wrong with eating the rind. I know a lot of people who prefer to eat the rind, but for this application, we're just going to use the center. We're just going to use the core of it. So wonderful cheese, as long as you're buying it, from a reputable store. If it sits around too long, the problem with taleggio is that it's a cheese that's very alive. It's still breathing. So if you wrap it up in saran wrap, all kinds of funkiness happens. Like it goes green and blue and all shades of the rainbow. But it just ruins the cheese. The actual heart of the cheese goes bad. So if you have a little bit left over, you can see I just threw everything out. But I wrap it in a piece of parchment paper, and then I'll wrap a piece of like paper towel around that just to help absorb any sort of moisture. And then I put it in the fridge, just like that. I don't put it in a Ziploc bag. If you put it in a Ziploc and you completely seal it,
it's bad.
It'll go bad very, very quickly. Your fridge is going to smell like taleggio. So it just means
get used to it.
Hurry up and eat it.
And for anybody out there, I think we're going to put this link somewhere, but in terms of the availability of taleggio, if you're sort of in the GTA-ish area, and I think that sort of includes the perimeter, you can get it at Fortino's and Longo's and Sobeys, the Cheese Boutique, Grande Cheese. And then there's also some like places that outside the GTA, if you look where we're going to link it here, it'll give you some other options for it in case you're looking for it.
Cool. Or you can just come to my house because I have a lot left over. So.
I'll be right there.
Come, bring the puppy. Okay, so now we are going to start actually making the sauce. Now, before I move on, I just remembered something that I did want to mention. You can make this with decaf.
Oh.
So this one is not decaf, but like when I'm cooking and my son's going to be eating and I don't want a hyper-caffeinated 7-year-old, I'll use decaf, and it works just as well. The flavor profile is almost identical. So, wow, there's some crazy thunder happening. If I just disappear, it's not
I know,
me.
I was just going to say, woo!
Just looking out the window, it looks like the end of the world. Okay, so now we're going to start cooking. Now, I'm going to start with my regular DOP olive oil. and we're going to start cooking our ingredients for the sauce. So kind of medium heat. You don't want it too cold, because if it's too cold, then again, your squash will get all squashy. So you want medium high heat. We're going to give it a quick saute. It usually only takes about a minute to cook the squash. And as you sort of alluded to, we want it to still be a little bit firm on the inside. So into the pan, and if I was smart, I would have my salt and pepper here. So I'm just going to grab my salt and pepper real quick. That would have been too, intelligent.
While you're looking for your salt and pepper, Roberto, someone asked, actually someone said they found the cheese at the Jean Talon market in Montreal. So she was very excited, which is very cool. Nice. But someone else asked if they can't find it, what would be the best substitute?
I mean, taleggio is very, very unique in its flavor profile. So if I couldn't find taleggio and I had to do this, I would probably use like gorgonzola.
How about a gorgonzola?
Sweet gorgonzola.
Yeah.
And cut it, use half gorgonzola and half like a fior di latte or something kind of neutral.
Yeah.
Because the whole idea behind this dish is that we're celebrating that big, creamy, rich flavor of the taleggio. So you can't really do it with, I don't know,
like brie,
like mozzarella. Yeah, brie. I mean,
it's got the right texture, but it doesn't have the right taste, right?
Yeah, and wrong country too.
Yeah. Wrong country. You're right.
We have to. Yeah, no, I mean, brie probably would work, but it's a lot sweeter.
Yeah.
And the whole idea here, that's why we're adding the pears. That's why we're adding the squash, because that sweetness plays off of the rich, robust flavor.
Right.
I'm trying to find nice ways to say mildly stinky.
I know.
Flavors. Do you have any for me?
Someone just asked if it's similar to Oka. The Canadian Oka cheese?
Oka is stronger.
Yeah.
Oka has a stronger flavor than taleggio.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's similar. Like if you smelled them side by side, yes.
Yeah.
But Oka, I find the flavor is more similar to the scent, whereas taleggio, when you get a good fresh taleggio, honestly, you eat the inside, and as long as the rind is nowhere near you, it doesn't taste anything like it smells. It's pretty awesome.
Gotcha.
So, quick little saute of our squash. And we just want to, like I said, cook it so that it still has a little bit of bite in the middle. So, we just take them out, and you get to snack on a whole bunch of them, because that's the only way to know. Just grab one, pop it in your mouth, see how it goes. I'm going to drop that one on the ground because, that's the way. It's turning into one of those kind of days. I'm sorry. So, and it looks pretty good. Oh yeah, that's perfect. So it still has a bit of a crunch. When I put it in my mouth, it's soft on the outside, but it still has a little bit of a bite. So now we dump in our shallots. Now, our shallots, we don't want to cook them too long because we don't want any browning. We don't want the shallots to brown at all. If it browns, then it's going to taste like fried onions. And I don't know, your pasta is going to taste more like a hot dog at the carnival than it will taste like a pasta. So I don't know what else. Where else do you use fried onions?
Sorry, someone was asking also about the different, because I know we're talking about olive oil too. So the differences in olive oil, like a finishing oil versus the one that you're using here in the pan. That's
a kind of a good question.
A loaded question?
Kind of a loaded question. I only use like DOP and IGP olive oils.
Yes.
And I use different olive oils for different applications.
Yes.
So when I cook, this is my, this big squeeze bottle of olive oil. This is a DOP olive oil as well. I just put it in a squeeze bottle because it's easy to, to pump in and out of the pans, but it's still a DOP olive oil. I use that for cooking honestly, because it's like $5 cheaper for a 750 milliliter bottle,
Yeah.
and the flavor is still really good.
Right.
And I use a lot of olive oil. Let alone the classes, just cooking for my family, I go through a bottle a week at least. When it comes to finishing olive oils, I have a lot of different finishing olive oils, because olive oil it's like wine, very, very, very similar to wine in that it's harvested from a fruit and processed, and every year it changes, right? Depending on the harvest of the olives, depending on the weather, depending on how busy the farmer is, if he doesn't have time to pick all his olives.
Right.
So
true. Yeah.
So even if you have even if you're brand loyal and you find a brand that you really, really like, year to year, it's going to change in flavor.
Yeah.
So I'm just constantly trying different olive oils, constantly,
So it's kind of
tasting
like
them,
wine,
making
right?
sure
Like
that they're
where
good.
you just try different ones and then maybe have different tasting notes for different things depending on what you're going to be using it on top of.
Absolutely. So there are some general guidelines, like the further south you go in Italy, usually the more peppery the olive oils are, which in this case, for this dish, that's kind of what we're doing here, because it's kind of it has like a bite to it.
Right.
When you taste it, it kind of pulls in the back of your throat.
Yeah.
Like a young Barolo. It kind of pulls in the back of your throat. But when you go a little bit further north, because of the different varietals, and even certain parts of Tuscany especially, there are certain varietals that are used that produce like a very sweet olive oil.
Right.
And there are some producers that are actually harvesting the flowers of the olives and putting the olive flowers into the press with the rest of the olives. Yeah, and it extracts like a very, very sweet floral, perfumey element.
Wow. Yeah, very cool.
So even though DOP and IGP, they tell you that you're getting a quality product,
right?
It doesn't mean that they're all going to be the same. And just like wine, when you get into olive oils, it becomes a bit of a, I don't want to say an obsession, but
it is an obsession. It is, yeah.
Yeah.
And if
you can spend a lot of time.
There's on Roberto's thing here, I have one here. So these are the labels that you're looking for. So the red label is the DOP label, and the blue, red and yellow, and then the blue and yellow are the IGP one. So these are the labels that you're supposed to be looking for an authentic product, just so that you know when you're looking for the product.
Always very important. And when it comes to DOP and IGP, a very important thing to remember is that it's not strictly an Italian designation. It is all across, Europe. It's an independent association. So you may go to a grocery store and there are IGP and DOP products from different countries. It's all the same, governing body that controls it all. So it's a good way to it's just like with wines, the DOCG, with Italian wines, the VQA with Canadian wines. It's just sort of a good jumping off point.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to get to the serious part of the sauce, and that is adding our taleggio. So just a big scoop of the inside, just the inside, none of the rinds of the taleggio. And we put that into the pot, and then we're going to give it another one because I'm making a bit of pasta. So just kind of, normally I would do this a little bit more, I'm kind of doing it like a caveman here, but generally I'd be a little bit more delicate with it. But our taleggio goes in, and we're going to use some of the pasta water to make our sauce. So our pasta water, it's already been salted. We just put that in, pour it right in. I'm doing 4 ounces at a time. And we just let it work together. Let it come together. Let the cheese melt. And this takes a couple minutes, and you need to pay attention to it. So I always use stainless steel pots just for instances like this, so I can use a whisk right in my pot. If this was a Teflon pan, I wouldn't be able to do this. So we just slowly start dissolving. Oh yeah, that's going to be nice. It slowly start dissolving our cheese, and you'll see that the oil will sort of come to the top of your sauce. That's okay. Don't worry. It will get reincorporated once the cheese completely melts and your sauce comes together. Now, the challenge here is to not let it boil too aggressively. If this comes to a boil, the cheese will burn to the bottom of the pan. And not only will it ruin the flavor of the sauce, but it'll take you a week and a half to clean your pan, which is never fun. And then you'll say, what did that guy show me? I don't know. I think he was faking it. That wasn't real. So our cheese is dissolving nicely. And because we're making the sauce ahead of time, we want to leave it a little bit runny. You want to leave it not a completely finished sauce. Because again, once I turn the heat off, it will continue to cook.
Yeah.
It will continue to reduce. And we want to make our adjustments right at the end. So there we go. Everything is in. And the only seasoning I put in, I just put a small turn of salt and pepper on with the squash because I'm using the pasta water, which is already salted.
Right.
So if we, keep adding salt and salt and salt, it's going to be pretty nasty. So again, that's another reason why we don't want to reduce this too much either. You're better off to add a little bit of water and have it be too thick and then have to add a little bit more water than have it be too watery. If you put in too much water and it's too wet and you have to reduce it, you're not only reducing the water, but you're reducing the salt content, making it far, far, far too salty.
Right.
So now comes the pasta cooking time.
Okay.
So pretty simple, salt, water.
Oops. Oopsie.
I told you it's one of
I'll
those
hold
days.
it.
Thank you. So I'm using some Apertura pasta again because it's IGP. So we want to use. There's a lot of brands of pasta that are DOP IGP, and we want to make sure that I don't. You know what? I'm going to spill this all over the floor. I'm going to cut it.
And Roberto, is this a semolina pasta or an egg pasta?
These are semolina flour. So this pasta, dried pasta, is more often made with semolina flour, which is good, and I like it. It holds its doneness well. Like when you cook it al dente, it'll stay al dente for a good long time. Whereas egg noodles, I like the flavor of egg noodles better. I really do think that they have a better flavor. But when they're cooked, they're cooked.
Yeah.
And you have to get it on a plate crazy quick.
Yeah.
So, we want to make sure that, I'm going to switch that. No, I'm going to leave it here. So our pasta goes in, we give it a little stir. Now I'm just kind of putting it into this little basket that kind of holds it. So the bottom half kind of cooks a little bit. And then I'm just going to flip it over. I'm just doing this because I don't like using colanders. I don't know why. Maybe it's from my years in a restaurant, but I don't like using colanders. I prefer to do it this way. So our pasta goes in. It will fall in there eventually.
I have never seen pasta cooked that way. Isn't that funny?
Well, I mean, in most restaurants, that's what we do, right? We have a giant pot and usually 4 of these baskets. Or if you're lucky enough, you have an actual pasta machine.
Yeah.
It's just, in a restaurant when you're making a pasta every 40 seconds, you can't be running to the stove and dumping out your boiling water.
So since we're talking about pasta, someone asked if you could explain what al dente feels like in your mouth.
Al dente feels like heaven. It's a very fine line between being too hard and being overcooked. With egg noodles, like I said, if you're doing like an egg pasta, just double O flour and eggs.
Right.
It's a difference of about, I'd say about 40 seconds in the water where it overcooks. With semolina pasta, the window is much bigger.
Better, yeah.
So the only way to really know, please don't ever throw a piece of pasta against the wall to see if it sticks. I remember the first time I saw that, my jaw was in my lap. That tells you nothing about whether it's done. That just tells you how starchy the pasta is.
Yeah.
What you have to do is you keep eating it, and you'll notice that there's a chalkiness to half-cooked pasta. So when you bite into it, it may be soft on the outside, but the inside is chalky, and it tastes like I said, chalk, like you're eating a piece of chalk. Not that we've all eaten chalk before, but we can kind of imagine what a piece of chalk tastes like. So from the time that it's chalky to the time that it's cooked with linguine or any sort of thin pasta, it's usually about a minute and a half.
Okay.
So what you want is you want to be able to bite your pasta and have to actually put a little bit of effort into it. Actually have to use your jaw muscles.
Yeah.
If you just put it in your mouth and you can squish the pasta between your tongue and the roof of your mouth, then it's overcooked.
Yeah.
If you bite it and it actually crunches, then it's undercooked.
Yeah.
So
and I know you were talking about this before, but I think there's a lot of people out there that don't really know. Like we said, that in restaurants, people will send it back sometimes and they'll say it's undercooked. It's undercooked. Yeah. But I think it's a matter of just getting used to having that bite and knowing that that's how it tastes. Because you're right, Roberto. I think a lot of them are overcooked. Yeah.
It is, and it's sort of a thing in North America that we as chefs who know, we take that responsibility on of educating our customers.
Right.
Now, some want to be educated and some don't.
Right.
But in the end, I feel I have to do it. So it happens. I mean,
of course.
I just did a private catering. I don't know, when was it? 2 weeks ago. And it was the same thing. I made the pasta, I cooked it, and the guest ate it and said, "It's a little bit hard, isn't it?" And I said, "It's." And I'm like, "Where were you born? Where were you born?" No, so it is something we have to teach people. And like I said, we've come a long way, honestly.
Sure.
Like we as North Americans, we've come a long way into understanding that. But yeah, we still run into people who
for sure,
who want their pasta mushy.
Yeah, that's okay. It is what it is.
And as customers, I mean, as a chef, customers always right. So whatever they want, I will cook.
Somebody actually mentioned that at the very beginning that you were cutting out a little bit. So I just wanted to let people know that it's being recorded so you can watch it. But it's probably because of the weather. And Roberto, I think maybe we should tell them the keyword now.
Oh, yeah.
Segue into your keyword.
Great segue. Wow, Susie, you're good. So for the DeLonghi incredible, wicked, awesome coffee machine, the secret word is thunderstorm.
Yay!
So type that in, email the wonderful people at the Italian Chamber of Commerce, cross your fingers, and hopefully you will win.
There you go.
That was a great segue. You're
good.
Wasn't it?
I know.
Yeah.
There's also something else, and I don't know if you think this is sacrilege, but a question came up. Is it okay to break the spaghetti?
Absolutely. Absolutely. For this particular dish, and generally in restaurants, I don't break my noodles because you have more options as far as plating goes.
Right.
So, yeah, but at home, I mean, when my son was young, I always used to cut my pastas because if not, it would end up,
right.
pasta sauce from his forehead down to his toes. So yes, there are times where cutting a pasta, is okay.
Okay.
So yeah, no, not a problem. Now, one thing I'm going to do that's not on the recipe is I'm going to add a little bit of rosemary. So
yum.
I'm just taking a little sprig of rosemary. You can see it's not very long at all. And I'm just throwing it right into the pan. Now, I'm doing this off the heat because I just want to extract the flavor very, very, very gently, very softly. Now, rosemary is a very, I think, underutilized and misunderstood herb. I'm sure if it was alive, it'd need therapy because a lot of people think that rosemary is a very strong flavor. It's very heavy flavor. And it's really not. It does that when you chop it all up with a dull knife. So if I take that same sprig of rosemary and chop it with this knife, because we've already seen how dull it is, it would completely change the flavor and it would be very, very strongly flavored sauce. But when you add it whole, just like a bay leaf to your sauce, and you just let it sit in there, like it's steeping in the warm sauce. It extracts the flavor of the rosemary, but it's very sweet. It's not strong. It's not crazy overpowering. So we're just gonna do that. And pasta is almost done. So after you cook enough pasta, you kind of get good at just looking at it and knowing if it's ready or not. But the way today's going, I don't really trust myself. So I'm actually going to try it. So yeah, so it has that chalkiness. It's a little bit chewy, but it's a little bit chalky on the inside. Has a nice crunch to it. So we're gonna give it about 1 more minute.
You know, Roberto, we talked about coffee and you're giving it to your son. I remember when I was little, I think I was 4, and my breakfast used to be yesterday's bread broken up with hot milk on top, a shot of espresso, and then on the side, an egg yolk with a shot of marsala and a little bit of sugar. And I remember my mother telling me that, and I'm like, what? Like I was 4 and I had like white bread, sugar, alcohol, and caffeine. Like that's why I talk so fast.
And you turned out okay. You turned out just fine. I did the same thing. I mean, I grew up on toast and Nutella. That was
exactly.
my dad. I started working for my dad when I was 9 years old. So we would get up at 5:30 to go to work. And, you know, my mom would stay in bed and she was the cooker of the house. So my dad's culinary skills were very limited. So he would make toast, put a 1/4 pound of butter on it and Nutella, and make me an instant coffee. And that was breakfast for years. So our pasta should be very close. I'm just going to check it one more time. And we should be good to finish our pasta. Oh yeah.
Perfect.
So that is cooked. That is delicious.
Great.
Now we're going to finish our pasta. So our sauce has sort of congealed a bit because that took a little longer than I thought. So I'm just going to warm it up again. And like I said, keep on stirring it, keep on moving it. You can see that the cheese will always, some of the cheese will always stick to the bottom of the pan. So you want to make sure you get that up as best you can. That's why rubber spatulas work incredibly well. And we just want to warm this up, dissolve the cheese again. And right now, the sauce, the consistency of the sauce, it should be a little bit thicker than like an egg. If you were to crack an egg and whisk it, you want it to be a little bit thicker than that. Because once we put the pasta in, as long as we strain it very well, the starch from the pasta will actually thicken up the sauce. Now, there's a way to cheat here, and that is if it's a little bit too wet and your pasta is cooked and you don't have time to simmer it and bring it down, you can always just grab a handful of like Parmigiano or even Grana Padano, which is, you know, a little softer, a little sweeter, and you can just thicken your sauce up really quick with a handful of grated Parmigiano.
Gotcha. That's good. That's good. Now I have another question, because not that you would have leftovers, because this pasta sounds amazing that you would eat it all, but sometimes, like if I'm teaching a class and I tell people, like if you have a pasta with like no sauce, like just sort of a way to keep like a cup or 2 of the pasta water in the fridge, so that if you have leftovers, you can just add that instead of adding water because it's got the starch in it. Would you say that with this, or? Would you... Absolutely.
No, that's a wonderful, wonderful suggestion. Now, like I said, you're right. I never have leftovers. But it would be a better way to warm up your pasta than just using crazy old tap water. That's a great idea. Can I start telling people that?
Of course, it's yours. I think I heard it. Yeah.
Okay, so now you can see our sauce. The cheese is melted. It's all sort of come together. So now, because I put that little sprig of rosemary in, I'm going to fish it out now. It's done what it's supposed to have done. It has flavored the sauce as much as we want it to. It's trapped a whole lot of cheese. Oh, that looks so delicious.
I know. That's good.
Look at that. Oh. I'm putting that aside and I'm going to eat that. I just won't do it on camera because it might not be the most delicate. Okay, so now we strain our pasta super well. and our pasta goes in, and we start moving it around. So we want to make sure that we get everything incorporated, get all those little pieces of squash mixed in with all the noodles. And this is where we add our our pear. So our pear's been hanging out in water. We just take it out, strain it out. Just gonna strain it with my hand, the old hand strainer. And we toss our pears in and we saute the whole thing together, trying to disperse everything evenly, which is, kind of hard, but whatever. Do your best.
Oh man, this smells. I can't smell it, but I can taste it from here. Like all my flavors.
That's the idea. So I like to let it sit for a second just to cool down so that the pasta sauce will stick really nicely to our noodles. While that's happening, I'm just going to do our last ingredient, which is a little bit of pistachios that I'm going to chop up. And this does a couple of things. It adds flavor, it adds a sweetness, but it also adds a crunch to the dish. And it's kind of important when you're plating food. I always say, you always want to have a contrast of textures. So this is going to add a nice little crunch. And I'm going to show two different ways to plate. Do I have time? Yeah, I got 7 minutes. So traditional way of plating, you get a pair of these pointy tongs. These are like pasta tongs. I use these almost exclusively when I cook, but they work really well for pasta. You just take a scoop of it, take a ladle and put it into the ladle and then twirl it right inside the ladle. This is how in restaurants we get those really nice tall balls of pasta. So we roll it around. That way we scoop it out. No, still not tight enough. Keep rolling till it's nice and tight. And then we transfer it right to a bowl once I get rid of this little hanger on. And as this sits, the sauce will keep getting thicker and thicker, and it'll be easier to do this. And I lost all my squash in here, so I'm going to just do another small one and put that right on top.
Another one, Roberto. Someone asked, and I think I know the answer, but if they could use sage instead of rosemary.
Yeah, sage is a wonderful flavor. Absolutely. Yeah. You can use sage. That's a good idea. I should have used sage. So that is the pasta's down. Now we add the coffee part. So our coffee sauce now, you can see it's become really quite thick. So this is why I like using this, because the sauce, if you look at the pasta noodles right now, they're very, meh. A little bit orange, kind of white. Sauce is white, noodles are white. But we drizzle a little bit of the coffee sauce right on top. It adds a bit of depth to the dish. We put on our pistachios, just kind of sprinkle them around. And I'm going to put a few little leaves of oregano. Now, like I said, because, this sauce is kind of thick and kind of rich and, has some really good flavor, we can get away with using some heavier herbs. We can use a little bit of rosemary. We could use some sage if I was smart. And a couple little leaves of oregano goes a long way in helping, make the dish come alive. Not only does it look good, but it just, makes it taste a little fresh. So that's one way of plating. I have 5 minutes. I want to show you another way of plating because this is kind of fun. So same basic idea. We take our tongs, we scoop up a nice big piece of pasta, and this is sort of, I don't want to say the new way of plating pasta, but it's definitely becoming the more popular way of plating pasta. What's that?
The way. I know exactly what you're going to do because I keep seeing it. I'm like, it's so pretty.
Yeah. So you take a nice long scoop, and you can't do this without like tongs like this that are pointy. You can't use, your regular barbecue tongs to do this because you need to be able to remove the pasta, your tongs from the pasta. So what we do is we just hold your noodles horizontally and you roll it and roll it and roll it until you find a nice spot like that. And then what we do is we just drape this onto a plate. Oh, I had a straggler here. And we get to use our fingers, which is fun. Nope. I did too much. This is the fun part of cooking. We get to do this as many times as it takes to make it look pretty for the customers. Good thing I have lots of plates. So,
okay, while you're doing that, Roberto, someone asked that the coffee looked a little bit like a balsamic reduction. Could you use that? And I'm thinking that would be too acidic.
you can use balsamic, but it changes the flavor, right? Like then it's not about the coffee.
Right.
And it is about the consistency of a good balsamic reduction or a really good made balsamic, like, you know,
Yeah.
ooh, that's hot. A really good aged balsamic. So you could, in theory, use balsamic, but the flavor is not the same.
Really
The whole idea with the coffee is the flavor of the bitterness of the actual coffee kind of lightened up with the sugar. It kind of makes it unique and makes it kind of special.
Can't wait to try this. Oh my God, I'm so excited. So excited.
So generally, if I had more time, I would do this a third time because that one turned out a little bit.
It looks perfect from the air.
Yeah, I'm going to unfocus my camera on purpose so that it looks beautiful. So our pistachios, our little drizzle of coffee sauce, and you can use as little or as much as you want of this. But honestly, it sounds kind of weird, right? Like it sounds weird to do reduced espresso on top of a pasta. But because of all the other flavors that we put on here, it actually works. It really works. So oregano goes on because it looks pretty, gives it a little flavor. And our pasta finally is done.
Perfect.
Remove my little rosemary. I should use that little rosemary taleggio blob as a garnish too.
Someone asked about the tongs, Roberto. You can get those at a restaurant supply store.
Yeah, I mean, I bought these ones. I bought in Italy at one of those little, outdoor markets, and they were like €5. They were amazing. But here, any restaurant supply store, they're usually called plating tongs.
Yeah.
And these are 12-inch. And you can go on Amazon. You can find anything on Amazon. So
you're right.
Yeah, 12-inch plating tongs. You just want to look for ones that are one piece, because a lot of them, they're two separate pieces that are kind of stuck together, and they break very, very quickly. Whereas one-piece ones, they're machined from one piece of aluminum. So yeah, for stainless steel, and they work very well, and you have them for years.
Perfect.
Okay, so look at that. I'm on time.
Oh, that's great. Well, that looked really amazing. I want to try it this weekend. Thank you, Roberto. And thank you, Susie, for being with us. That was great. We're looking forward to having you back on July 27th, I believe. It's going to be our last class of the series, and we're happy to have you back. So thank you very much.
Thanks for
keeping us company and having this conversation with Chef Roberto. Thank you, Roberto. Again, remember to take a picture of your plate, that we're going to keep them in file with the other ones. Obviously, thank you so much to our sponsor, DeLonghi, for sponsoring this class as well. And I'd also like to thank you, all my colleagues that made this class possible tonight, starting from Astrid Durzo, Ilaria Venosa, Monica Gamarota, Richard Bressan, and Mary Kiriko, and our executive director, Corrado Paina, that is always following us. And on the occasion of our 60th anniversary, become a member of the Chamber at a special entry level of $200 and keep supporting us. And have a great long weekend, or Canada Day actually on Thursday, and we'll see you again next week. Thank you so much. Buona serata e arrivederci.